Hi, I'm Joseph Hall. I do a lot of cloud work at SaltStack. I'm in charge of the Salt Cloud product, and I work with a number of cloud providers, which makes it interesting for doing demos like this. The Azure team has been really, really great to work with, and I'm excited to do this demo with them. Cool. If you guys have questions in general about the Azure driver, about Salt Cloud, by all means, feel free to ping me.
And to emphasize that, questions, I want to encourage you to ask questions here as well. One of the goals that we have here is to get feedback from you as to where you want this to go, and we'll start off by telling you where we are going, but feel free to interrupt and ask questions, etc., as we move on. So I'm Ross Gardler. I'm from Microsoft Open Technologies. I'm not part of the Azure team, although the Azure team are fantastic. We do a lot of work in the open source space. My background is very much in open source. I've been with Microsoft a couple of years, but I've been making a living out of open source for 20 years now. I do a lot of work around the Apache Software Foundation. And this is what we want to enable people to do. The seemingly impossible. It doesn't matter what you're trying to turn around, what you're trying to deliver, what you're trying to deploy, and what environment you're trying to do it in, you can do it. And the way you achieve this is clearly have a plan. I went to a session earlier today saying, have checklists and go through, follow the checklists. They'll help you catch the problems. And it's absolutely true. If you have a plan, you can do what seems to be amazing. Unfortunately, my plans often look like this. Subtle changes in the environment from what I intended result in catastrophic failure. I think we've all been through something similar to like this, but fortunately not quite as dangerous. So some people will tell us that, well, it's all about the team. If you've got the right team together, you've got the right skills in your team, you train together, you understand, you have the right communication between yourselves, you can get over any obstacle. It doesn't matter what the environment is. You can work around the obstacles. That's true too, except that many teams look more like this one. How many of you have been the first one to go down? I do it regularly. People have different skill sets, they have different experiences, and often you'll find in a team that because of deadlines, because of things that you've got to work to, you're trying desperately to run as fast as you can, and you don't realize that you're running too fast for some people in the team around you. So tools are a great thing to help teams come together and help teams do the right thing. And with the right tools, you can do some strange things, I think. And indeed, with the right tools, like Salt, which is a fantastic tool, you can do some fantastic and amazing things. But the wrong tools in the wrong hands can be a bit lonely. And you can end up with this situation where the tools are promising so much, but because you're focusing more on the tools than the environment that you're working in, you're missing the fact that there's some other much more enjoyable tools right next to you that you should be using. And all this comes down to what Microsoft are doing, engaging with organizations and open source projects like Salt. And I emphasize the two different things there. One is the software that we all use. And the other is the company as well that is leading the development of that software and building the community around the software. And our goal is to get involved with both. With the community because they help us in the way that we understand it and vice versa. And with Salt because they are a company that can deliver, frankly, workloads to Azure. But we can help them support their customers as well. So Joseph, you want to tell us a little bit about Salt and why Salt is one of these wonderful tools that he was ignoring in the other one? It's the slide. I like to think of it as the slide for some reason.
Yeah, you guys have all heard the pitches about Salt already quite a bit this week. That's going to echo. Salt, by design, it's flexible, it's pluggable. In fact, I would say that Salt is really a wrapper around plugins. It's an orchestrator around plugins. And as we've started to add things in, we've been able to make certain components very agnostic. You would be able to take out the Azure driver and toss in an EC2 driver or a soft layer driver or whatever, or even use them all together at the same time, depending on your needs. And this is an interesting set of conversations that I've had with Ross and his team this week, is the fact that their customers are looking to avoid vendor lock-in. They don't want to just use Azure, and they're upfront with Azure and saying we want to be able to use other people as well. And that's one of the things that I've been told is very important to Azure, is that they can help their customers achieve those things. Salt, as you all know, is designed to work with the workflow that you have and not dictate your workflow. We're not all about coming down and saying you need to do things this way. This is always the right way to do it. First of all, it's not going to happen, and second of all, if you try to force people into your workflow, you're going to get some very angry people, both people that have used or are using your product or refuse to use your product because you're trying to force their workflow. And that's one of the big things, one of the big draws from Salt. One of the things that's gotten us a lot of users from other communities is our willingness to say, sure, we'd love to see your workflow in here, and we'd love to help support it, and we'd love to use it along with our workflows. We have multiple cloud provider support. We have about 20, somewhere in the 20 range, different cloud providers we support, including Azure. Our support for Azure at the moment is, we'll talk about the feature set in a moment. It's not quite as far along as some of the other drivers, but it is in active development. In fact, are any of you guys on the mailing list or active in the issue tracker? There's been a gentleman that has been working with me very actively in Paris that has been using Azure quite a bit. And we've got some really great stuff from him, and it's starting to be a very competitive driver. You guys know that Salt has some very fast community releases. We're under a release candidate right now for 2015.2. We have another release candidate coming out probably in the next few days. I'm not going to say this week. We all know that's not going to happen. We're all busy. But probably sometime next week we'll see that come out. And in a few months after that, 3 or 4 months, you might see another community release. But we also have, enterprise branch is probably not the right word. We do have enterprise packaging that we put together, but we don't actually branch off Salt into its own proprietary thing and start adding in things just for enterprise customers. But we do have enterprise support that's fairly long-term. And that's been very attractive to a lot of our customers as well. Go ahead.
Excellent. And you mentioned vendor lock-in, and the work that we do at Microsoft OpenTech is all about avoiding that. It's all about providing interoperability. It's all about solving the challenges that we have at every phase, dev, test, through to production. And the reason for that, I mean, you guys know that. You're here presumably because this is part of the problem. It's not just configuring Linux machines. It's not just configuring Windows machines. It's not just configuring an operations deployment. It's about dev. It's about test. It's about production. It's about heterogeneity across that. So, you know, developers will use X technologies, whereas testers want Y, and so on. Those different tools that we were talking about earlier on. And it's also about maximizing choice. You might want to switch where you're doing your test environments. You might want to be able to fire things up quickly in wherever the cheapest cloud is, because it doesn't matter. If you're just doing it for test, just put it wherever. You might want to be able to move your whole application from one cloud to another. And as Joseph said, that's what we hear from our customers, and so that's what we're trying to do with our engagements with people like Salt. We do this because a couple of salesy slides I'll go over very quick. We believe that Azure is a cloud solution that you're going to want to use. So it's not a problem for us that you might be able to move elsewhere. We'll stay. We believe once you're using Azure, you'll stay there. So there's reasons why we might do that. I'm not going to do a sales pitch for Azure, so I'll quickly jump over the sales pitches. We have lots of data centers and blah, blah, blah. And then on to something that's a bit meaty. Why is Azure a target for Salt? Well, you heard some of that then from Joseph. For us, it's largely about the Linux story. Now, we do have Windows support within Salt, and it's very important to be able to support Windows on Azure, as you'd expect. But 20% of the workload today on Azure is Linux. And the specialties around Linux and managing Linux is not inside of Microsoft. It's in organizations like Salt. And so that's really what it's about. It's about bringing in the benefits from the community and us bringing the benefits that we have in running the data centers and so on. So how are we going about this? So I said I wanted feedback on the approach. We're early days on this. We have this thing called VM Depot. It's at vmdepot.msopentech.com, but any search will take you there. And this is a repository of Linux and FreeBSD virtual machines for deployment on Azure. And we see there's Tomcat there, but you've got everything from base level operating systems all the way up to end user distributions of open source software. And what we've done, along with SaltStack, is we've made a SaltMaster available on VM Depot. So you can very quickly, and Joseph's going to demo this in a few moments, very quickly get a instance of SaltMaster up and running on Azure using a pre-built image, which is provided by SaltStack. You can deploy it from the command line. That's one way of doing it. You'll see a different method in a few moments. You can do it through Easy Deploy. I'm not going to go into any detail because that brings us to the demo section. Now, just while we switch over these computers, you want that, this is only the first stage. And we're going to give you a demo of what's possible today using this master from VM Depot. And then after that, we're going to talk about what the next stages are. And that's the most important part from my point of view. There's not that many people in here, but you guys have all decided to come here because you have a particular need that you want to understand. Can we solve that? We want to know what that need is, what drove you here. And so we want to know, okay, what's the next priority? We're making it easy to kick the tires in what we're talking about here, but what's the next priority? Before we get onto that, though, let's see what we have got. Joseph.
So you guys could see up there we had a Salt Minion image up. I should have prepared better and gotten up the SaltMaster image. This was something that came up too in our conversation with Azure last week. And this is something that you may have heard from some of us in the past. The thing that we would really like to see Salt be is the thing that you install. It's one of those things that's always on your servers. You're not going to install a Linux desktop without X, for instance. You're not going to work in an Office environment with Windows without Microsoft Office, right? And when you set up a server right now, you don't necessarily set up a server without SSH. That's something that's always there. But most of the work that is done over SSH, other than things like editing files directly in Vim, which you could still do locally on your machine, these are things that you can do over Salt. And so we set up, first off, they only asked me for a master image, but I put up a minion image as well so that you could spin up an image automatically in Azure and be able to just connect to that instead of connecting over SSH. Those of you that have used Salt Cloud have also seen this functionality with the Bootstrap script, bringing up minions easily. So the more interesting story here is the SaltMaster. The SaltMaster is something that, first off, you're not necessarily going to be spinning up from Salt Cloud. You're going to be spinning it up to put Salt Cloud on, right? And so this machine has been set up with Salt Cloud, Salt API, the things that are normally available on a master, so you don't have to go and search around in Apple for it. It's got Apple pre-installed, and you can go through and click on, either this deployment script thing and use agree first, I guess. Select the region. This will give you a command line to use with the Azure toolkit to set it up. Or we could hop out of there and click on the deployment tutorial, and there's a deploy. There we go. Sorry, this is what I want, is create virtual machine. I'm not signed in. Tell you what, we'll switch over to Azure. I've got my virtual machine already up and running because deploying directly from the VM Depot does take several minutes, just because it has to copy over from that storage, that data center over to whatever data center you happen to be using. So I've got a machine up here. This is the Tech Hat Master, and I'm logged in over here. And raise of hands, not a whole lot of people in here, but raise of hands if you've used Salt Cloud. Okay, a couple of you guys have used it. How about Salt States? Okay, and those of you that raised your hand for Salt Cloud, have you used the maps before, Salt Cloud maps? So first off, let's take a look at some states that we have. Underneath Serve Salt, don't have a whole lot, and I'm sorry that you can't see what that says, but it says MediaWiki. And if we look at MediaWiki, those of you that are used to states, you've seen this sort of thing before. First off, I got lazy, so I just turned off IP tables. On Red Hat machines, traditionally, IP tables is, it blocks everything but port 22. On the Azure image, actually, IP tables is not in the way, but we're also going to spin up an EC2 image here that does have IP tables in the way. So that just shuts it down. We install MediaWiki, we configure MediaWiki, we install Apache, we install MySQL, we get those configured, we get the users laid down, everything's happy. This is just going to spin up a basic MediaWiki server. And if we look inside, this is the cloud map that I was talking about. This is very simple. We've got two different cloud profiles on here, one for EC2, one for Azure. Both of them are just straight CentOS 6.5 images. They don't have anything special in the image. It's just the stock image that they have up there. Salt Cloud is going to spin that up and get them salted. So Salt Cloud-M, point it to the map, and we'll do a -P to just do it in parallel. And do you guys want to see all the fun debug stuff? This is stuff that scares people that aren't me, but I love it. So I'm turning on the debug mode. And you'll see these clouds start to spin up. It takes, in each of these providers, it takes about 1.5 to 2 minutes to spin up the machine. And then once it's up and running, it takes another probably minute to get Salt running. Yes, proceed. And the MediaWiki itself takes about 3 minutes or so. And yes, I've done this enough to tell you how many minutes each one is. While this is spinning, Ross, do you have anything you want to talk about here? Because this is going to take just a moment.
I didn't know you were going to ask me to fill time. I'll do a dance or something. So the easy deploy thing that we didn't do then because it was we were not logged in is a very simple way of deploying the image from within VM Depot. You do need an Azure subscription in order to do this. But right at the end, I will tell you how to get an Azure subscription without parting with any money, which is always good. So ears open right at the very end. The other way of deploying is through the command line. That was mentioned before. The command line tooling there is our cross-platform command line tooling. It's written in Node.js, so whatever tooling you're using, no problem. And any of those methods will work fine, as well as the portal, which was, well, we didn't actually show it, but you can deploy from the portal here as well. So there's 3 ways of deploying the image. It's very quick, it's very easy to do. I would say that easy deploy is probably the easiest if you've never used Azure. If you have used Azure before, then probably through the portal is the best route. And the whole purpose here is to show that it's really easy to get it up and running and kick the tires, but that we're focusing on this no lock-in. And this is a strategy that we have when we engage with many open source projects, that our goal is always to get you going quickly on Azure, and then just defer to the standard tooling for that project. So that's why we're talking about Salt Cloud here, because if we were to start managing these things through the command line tooling that we provide, well, that's putting us between you and the open source community and so on, and that's where unintentional or intentional locking can occur. And so that's why I'm particularly interested in hearing back from everybody here as to what's next. We're only firing up VMs here. What's the next important thing after that? And what should we focus on? What's the most important area? And SaltStack are also interested in that from the point of view of where should they focus their engineering efforts that will support this work on our side. Are we ready, or do you want me to fill in a little more?
Oops. I can talk a little bit more here. Some of you guys may have been watching the screen and saw that I misconfigured something because that's just how demos go. And so we've got the machine spinning up on Amazon, and then I screwed up the installation for Azure. So, and I don't know that Salt Cloud is going to let me do 2 at a time like this. So let's try it out. It might yell at me, or it might just start working. So we're good there. Those of you that have used Salt Cloud, you'll recognize this point in time. It's made a machine. It knows that it can connect to it. It's copying keys over. It's copying over what we call the deploy script. And in just a moment, you'll see the deploy script actually do the DOS detection and start installing Salt. This works. There we go. It's installing Salt now. We have also a startup state. Let me see if I've got another. Oh, and you see in the cloud map, I checked to see that 1 existed, but 3 did not. So I think we need to increase our limit on your account. And that's probably entirely my fault.
What's happened there is, by default, we limit the number of VMs that you can fire up because we found that people were firing them up and then complaining that they were being charged for things that they weren't using. But if it's running, it's running. So there's an artificial limit. I think it's 20 VMs, so you've been very busy.
Right.
So if you fire up 20 VMs, you can hit the limit, which is what happened there. It's very easy to lift it. But if you've got 20 VMs running, you've probably already lifted it anyway. You're not just doing demos.
Right. We actually have a QA team that runs daily tests against all the cloud providers, and sometimes they forget to clean things up. And this would be a week that we forget to do things. We've all been pretty preoccupied this week, so we're spinning that guy up now. Something else that I was going to show you here. One of the things that I love about Azure, by the way, when I name a machine, it's really easy to remember the URL because it's all at cloudapp.net. If we take a look inside my minion configuration, that's not what it was. Cloud.profiles.d. We'll look at the Azure one. So don't bother copying down the password. That machine will be dead in about 20 minutes. But this is going to spin up this machine to the OpenLogic CentOS image. It's going to log in. It's going to, what we're interested in is down here, the minion section. We have a startup state set up. Those of you guys that are familiar with startup states know that we have 3 different types. We can do a high state, we can do SLS, which means to give it a list of states, or we can do top, where we specify something other than the top.SLS for the basically what would be the same as a high state. And so this guy here looks like our VM is spinning up here. Let me go ahead and open up some firewall ports. This is something that we're going to be mentioning towards the end, adding in the API to have Salt Cloud open those ports. Am I going to have to wait a minute here?
It should let you go once it's spun up.
Oh, it's still provisioning. These are some of the things that that you do a lot from the GUI that we're trying to automate from Salt Cloud, so that really we create a map, it opens up the firewall port, it opens up or it spins up the machine, it gets everything salted. The other guys should be up and running here already, so let's do a Salt Cloud. We can use the map file to look at individual machines. Let's get our arguments in the right order. This state, by the way, is available on the SaltStack formulas repo on GitHub. Have any of you guys looked at that at all? I saw a couple of head shakes. This is a fairly complete formula. It's got the Apache stuff built in. It's got the MySQL stuff built in. It's really great for doing demos, but you're going to be customizing it just a little bit for your own uses. Our network has been nice and fast here, huh? Okay, so our EC2 machine, since I did that guy first, is probably up and running already. Let's take a look. It's going to be /wiki. We'll see if it did things in the right order. Looks like everything's up and running there. The Azure machine, let's take a look at that guy. Going to be /wiki. That's not going to pull up just yet. We need to open up those ports.
So today, these ports can be opened from the command line if you do need to automate something today, but it's on the very top of the list, I believe, for enabling.
It is very, well, actually, it's number 3 on the list of the slides, but
okay.
it's up there.
Yeah.
It's one of the most obnoxious things about using Salt Cloud is when it can't open up the firewall ports that you need. And we've been working a lot with our users in making sure that we do that in the most easy to use and most intelligent way.
What, like turning off IP tables, you say?
Unlike turning off IP tables. I mentioned I got lazy at the IP tables thing. There's actually a full IP table state that you can go through and build your entire rule set entirely in salt states and just throw away what was already there. It's very powerful, very easy to use, and I'm just that lazy that I didn't.
We'll forgive you for a demo. That's fine.
Appreciate it.
As long as your production machines aren't like that. You've shown us your password and you've opened up all the ports.
That's true. Apparently you don't want to hire me for your production data centers, guys. And Daniel, cover your ears. Okay.
Okay, so
it's going to take a moment, but we get the idea here.
Yeah, we get the idea. You've seen that the same configuration, someone has fired up a machine on AWS. The same machine is firing up on Azure, all managed from a single SaltMaster. In this case, it's running on. There you go. In this case, it's running on, the SaltMaster is running on Azure, but of course it could be the other way around. You could be running it on-premise, you could be running it wherever you want. The key thing is that it being so easy to deploy that SaltMaster in the first place and get started and start giving us feedback about what you need and what's necessary. So this takes just a few seconds. So whilst that's coming up, let me just see. So you came in here because of what? Is it that you're interested in using Salt on Azure? Is it that you're interested in the hybrid environment? Is it you're interested in Salt and Windows? Nobody's giving anything away. So hybrid. So hybrid is used in many different ways. So when we say hybrid at Microsoft, we tend to mean off-premise and on-premise. So you can get what's called you can get basically the same tooling for on-premise as you have in Azure. So is that what you meant by hybrid, or that's the same definition? So that's one of the unique advantages of Azure. Another way of looking at it is hybrid across multiple clouds, which is what we're doing here. And really our goal is to minimize the barriers between any definition of hybrid. Other people think of it hybrid Linux and Windows, and that also applies in this case. So the hybrid story is probably strongest with Azure. It's almost identical what you can run in your own data centers to what is running up in Azure. And
I think we're still waiting for it to get salted.
Okay.
So it's going to be another couple of minutes.
Okay. Well, I don't think we need to necessarily prove it. We know it works.
We know it works. Let me go ahead and pass this cable
Yeah,
back
if you pass that across. So that machine, once it's been salted, would install MediaWiki in exactly the same way that it happened on AWS. And had we remembered to clear out the workload, it would have taken about the same amount of time, I think. Is that right in your experience?
Yeah, it's about the same.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about what we did, so I'll skip over that. Feature coverage. You want to tell us a little bit about how much is covered at the moment?
Let me take a look what's up here so I can speak to it. So right now the Azure performs the basic Salt Cloud commands, things that are required for every single Salt driver. We've got our basic create, destroy, query. That speaker's going to kill me. We have volume management that was recently added. There's only 2 other drivers that have that at this point. Actually, there may be 3 other drivers that have that at this point. So that you have the ability to create volumes and attach those to your images. We've got the master mini images up on the depot, and I'm going to be actively working with those in the next couple weeks to make sure that they're up to speed and up to our quality standards. And we're also looking at some certified images, I believe. The SaltStack Enterprise is coming out, and we're going to be putting together images for that are certified through Microsoft, that already have everything set up as far as we're concerned, so that you don't have to go through some of the pain that comes even with using a tool like Salt with setting a new machine and getting it up to speed. It's already ready to go. It's already connected. So we're working on some certified images there. I think that's going to be on another slide. You guys saw that I was going through and playing with the services to delete those and playing with the deployment management. Azure has a very unique way of setting up machines. Azure sets up a service first and then sets up a series of deployments underneath that service. it's really designed, it's very clearly, started looking at the API, it was very clearly designed for scaling and for spinning up new machines and having them act as if they're all one machine. And we're working on increasing that management. That N1 and 2 endpoint management, by which I mean firewall management on Azure. That's one of the really big things that we're interested in. And I should probably move import-export images down, but there's been a huge amount of interest of exporting images and migrating them over to another provider. And Microsoft has been very committed to being able to transfer VMs between Azure and EC2 and SoftLayer and Linode and the providers that support that kind of functionality. And so that's very high up on the list as well.
Excellent. So certified images were mentioned briefly there. So VM Depot is community managed images. So what you've got on there is the basic open source Salt configuration. There's no warranties. It's your usual, this is open source, no warranty, use it at your own risk. You're going to have to maintain it yourself. You're going to update it yourself, etc., etc. Now, I believe SaltStack will be updating the image periodically, but your deployments of that image, once you've deployed them, they're your responsibility and you've got to work with them. So Joseph mentioned certified images. That's the next stage, and that's in progress right now. Joseph talked a little bit about what that is, and that is for those people who don't want to take responsibility for their own images. And so there is a service level agreement involved with that. Exactly what that is, well, that's up to SaltStack to decide how much they want to sign up to on that.
This is something that's under conversation right now with our enterprise team to make sure we get that into something that fits well with what we're trying to do with our licenses and something that fits well with our customers.
Yeah, so it's going to be a number of weeks before that goes live, but we're well down the road there, and we're happy to say that it will definitely happen at this point. So you have your choice. You know, do you want to spend your time maintaining it yourself using the community image? Well, the VM Depot is a great place to start, and you can just work with the software, the open source software from there, or you can work with the certified image when we have that available. So I promised to tell you how you can get some free Azure time. Well, this one's a bit of a sweepstake. So on the stand we have out there in the Salt Shack, you can enter a draw to get $1,500 worth of Azure time. I have the first winner of that, but there's 2 more to go yet. So Noah Burnell of Coalfire, you are our first lucky winner, but if the rest of you, if you want to get your badges scanned, then you can still have an opportunity to win that. If you don't win that, I'll draw your attention to this link, aka.ms/salt. That will give you a 1-month free trial with, I think, is it $200? It's $200 worth of compute time over 1 month. If you're already MSDN subscribers, then you have Azure time on that as well. You just have to flick the switch and turn it on. Other resources up there for your interest. I'll come back to that slide in a moment. I just want to say that tools, teams, and process, where we started, doesn't matter how imaginative you are or how imperfect the process is. As long as it works, and then improve it from there. So that's what we're doing here. We've got it up and running. We've got it working. We've got the basic configuration there. What do we need to do to make it easier for you now? So we're here for questions, and we're around for the rest of the session. For the rest of the day, and unfortunately I'm not here after today, but my colleagues on the Microsoft stand are here tomorrow. Okay.
And obviously feel free to contact me at any point to ask about Azure, about the Salt Cloud drivers. Does anyone have any questions for us?
Okay, so you said you were interested in the hybrid situation. Are you actually using on-premise, off-premise at the moment, or are you just interested in how that works?
I just saw the name of the title, was curious what you guys were thinking about it.
Right, okay, so it's the idea of, although we were using AWS and Azure as the example here, it's the idea that it could be anywhere. It could be on-premise, off-premise, different clouds providers, etc. And the flexibility that Salt brings in that kind of environment for managing with the same tool across different environments. I personally think that's very powerful.
Okay, well,
Coffee time.
I think so. Thanks, guys.